Hi everyone, and it is Sunday the 22nd of May 2021, and what I'm going to be doing here is running through multiple asset classes. So basically I'm going to give you a broad overview of everything that is going on in the markets, including cryptos, including some of the commodities, gold, oil, currencies. And actually, if you want to, so if you're not interested in all of it, I'm going to try to keep it as brief as possible. But if you want to skip to those sections, you can obviously go into the time-stamped sections in the description below and then just click on that and go to that particular section. But it's a really good idea to see if there is perhaps a pattern occurring across the different across the markets, and you might find that particularly interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off now with some currencies. I'm going to look at commodities. I'm also going to look at the indices and then cryptos, and then what I'm going to do is go through specific charts that for me are either representing extreme changes that are probably on the verge or on the horizon, verge of occurring, and then of course charts that I will be looking for trading opportunities this coming week. Okay, and again, if you want me to have a look at something next week or during the week, just put it in, just get engaged, comment on the page, and then I'll have a look and include it. But yeah, so there's a range of different things. So let's kick off, starting off with the dollar index. So what I was looking for last week is to see the dollar break through 90. It has done that, but there's an area here around almost exactly 89,675, which is such a random number, and it certainly is attempting to break through that level of support. I'd like to see it continue down, but actually we need to see if this is going to get through it this week. So what I'll be looking for is a break below that, and I do think that if it does break through that, it's going to continue to head low, and it has kind of dipped its toe in the water, but then that's what I'd like to see. And so that $90 area is potentially acting as support. I need to see this kind of continue to head down, and then head towards 89. So that's really what I'm looking for. If I then move across and look at euro dollar, it's a similar type of issue. The same thing with euro dollar versus cable. There isn't really a lot standing in its way. It should be able to continue on, and for some reason it just isn't. And that's really the US dollar that's struggling a bit there. Again, looking here at cable, you can see it's bumping its head up there against 1.42, and bearish signal, bearish candlestick here, implying that it's going to head a little bit lower during the week. Again, there shouldn't be anything stopping it. It should be carrying on. So it isn't actually sterling that's the issue here. It's the US dollar. Okay, then having a look at the Aussie dollar, US dollar, these are just really a mess, and actually I think this could potentially head a little bit lower. There's no, again, looking at that monthly chart, you can just see it battling to get above that 77.50 level. Moving on to Kiwi dollar, similar issue here. It's also really struggling with that crisp level. It's a complete mess on the daily. These are really untradeable at this point in time, and it's possible it could head a little bit lower. So actually, compared to say last week, this week it's a little bit more uncertain as to what's going to happen with the dollar index. Last week it was looking sort of 60-40, it was looking more bearish, and therefore was going to head lower. At the moment, it's actually looking as though it's going to attempt to climb higher, and there just isn't a lot of clarity on that. There is general uncertainty with it, and so this is kind of standard at the moment. It just means exercising extra caution, especially for intraday trading. Looking here at dollar yen, it does look like it wants to attempt to climb higher. Dollar yen does its own thing. It's on its own mission. Looking here at dollar Swissy, that really does look as though that wants to head a little bit lower. So again, that's hinting at dollar weakness, and certainly looks like it wants to head lower. Dollar CAD is an interesting one. Dollar CAD, generally speaking, doesn't really appear that as though it wants to change its mind. There is some room for it to go a little bit lower, but at the same time on the daily, it looks as though it's stalling a little bit. So there may be a consolidation. So all of these keep referring back to dollar indecision. Right, dollar indecision, it is at a level, and there could be potential US dollar indecision. So this week, that just means, at least initially for the first couple of days, extra caution until that dollar decides if it's going to go up or go down. And so I'll see that because price will start to break through those key levels. All right, and so that's very much it for currencies. I am seeing it's higher risk because of that dollar uncertainty, and that's kind of why that's where I'm going to be cautious on that. So next up, I want to go ahead and have a look at commodities. I'm going to start off with gold. Okay, so here looking at gold, again, I don't really see much standing in its way up to 1900. There is some interesting stuff going on with the other metals, other precious metals I'm going to talk about in a moment. I really see that gold, there could be some normal, healthy retracements here, and to see that continue up to 1900. But that's generally what I'm expecting of it this week. There could be some interesting normal just retracements, but when I go have a look at the other precious metals, there's something else going on here. So silver's kind of pulled down. It's acting a little bit indecisive. That weekly candle looking a little bit like a rejection. Monthly looks fine. Okay, so again, this could be to do with the US dollar. It could actually be messing with the precious metals as well. And then what I'm going to do is later on, I'm going to go to the charts of interest. In a moment, you can jump ahead to that now if you want. I'm going to talk about copper, platinum, palladium. There's definitely something going on with metals, and then I'll come back to that. So moving on to crude oils. and then having a look at crude oils now. So one of the things that I wanted to keep in mind is that, if we're going to move across to fossil fuels over time, 10, 20, 30, we're going to move away from fossil fuels over the next kind of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. There could be this kind of slower, these lower highs starting to impact crude oils. And so this is what I'm looking at the moment, is monitoring to see if oil is capable of breaking through this. And of course, if it does, I expect it to head up to 75. But if it starts to break lower this week, especially breaking these previous lows, then actually I'm starting to take into account, I'm thinking there's a possibility there's going to be a longer term move back down towards 54. So I'm keeping that very much in mind. Looking at UK oil here, really battling with that 70 mark, and then looking to see if that's potentially going to head a little bit lower. So this week I'll be looking for oils to see if they can recover and head a little bit higher. Not really great trading opportunities. If they start to break the lows, that actually starts to hint at the possibility of a longer term downtrend. Okay, so that wraps it up for commodities such as crude oils as well as gold and silver. Now what I'm going to do is move across and have a look at the global indices. Okay, so starting off with the Dow, looking at the US, I want to get a sense of what's going on in the US. So there's a couple of things here. So first of all, although last week's candle was an inside candle, which really means it doesn't give you much clarity, it's a little bit on the bullish side. It didn't actually manage to go much higher. It pretty much opened and then went down, which implies uncertainty. And then having a look at it here on the daily, there's a mixture. The price action itself is actually both kind of, there's buyers below here and then sellers above here, or at least no buyers above this. And so again, there's that uncertainty. We're still a little bit overextended. And so what I'm actually going to do is carry across that high risk setting, certainly across this time around. So actually what I said last week was looking at the NASDAQ and the S&P, I wanted to see if price would head straight down, which is actually kind of what it did, and it pushed back up. And so what's happening here is a potential tipping point where there's a lot of buyers in here, but not enough to resume that trend at this point in time. And look at the price action here, closing on Friday, a nice solid rejection up there, but rejection of the lows is basically a little bit of a battle going on between the buyers above this area. There aren't any, so the sellers above this area and the buyers in this area, of which they still exist. A lot of people, a lot of money wanting to get back in the markets, wanting to resume those trends, but it is now looking more and more as though that longer term position might ultimately play out. So this week, what I want to be prepared for while I wait for the charts to update is to see if the market actually stumbles again. Okay, so the NASDAQ for me is really offering some clues here. It's indecision, a little bit bullish. Yes, it can break the high and resume and take another run at 14,000. That monthly is still not looking super bullish. So it's still high risk. I don't feel as though we've let off enough steam, and therefore we'll be able to continue up just yet. I'm just going to exercise a little bit more caution there. Moving on and having a look at, say, the Russell 2000 to see how that is then handling it. The Russell 2000 just stalling around this area, really not going anywhere. So incredibly high risk in terms of trading opportunities or intraday trading as well, and swing opportunities. And over here, just continuing to show that exhaustion. Okay, so there's a lot of potential here for this to correct and start to head down a little bit lower. So very quickly heading away from the US and then looking towards the UK and Europe, and then again heading further east just to see how the markets are there. So the FTSE, kind of managed to trade a little bit, trade water at the moment. It's looking at that 7,000 level. Again, it's also an inside candle. It's a little bit bullish, but it's not a great sign. It's not, to me. A very simple question is, if the markets were strong, what would they look like? And they wouldn't look like that. And so again, I also spoke last week about the DAX looking really nice, and it dropped down a bit and managed to recover. And these are looking nice and bullish. Okay, but you can also sort of argue that they're potentially hanging in situations, so there could be signs of exhaustion here. Certainly here it's a little bit overextended. Okay, so this one of the bunch actually looking the most bullish, but not looking safe. Okay, and if everybody else drops, it's going to be impacted as well. This also looking really nice. So now the Euro Stoxx price also pushing up, looking nice and bullish. Also looking nice and bullish. It's got to get through that area. So this is a kind of consolidation where it might ultimately break on and head higher. So we'll see how that goes. Then having a look at the Nikkei, and so let's head off and see how that's going. Obviously, this is now a weekly downtrend, has started its retracement. So this is the healthiest of the bunch as far as I'm concerned, because it's definitely letting off some of that steam. And if they can head in or down towards that 26,000 level, then it has an opportunity to recover and have a really nice kind of bullish summer in the northern hemisphere. Finishing off with the Australian ASX. Waiting for this. Okay, this is just not able to get past the 7,100 level. It's in a downtrend on the daily. It's completely undecided on the weekly, and it's battling with the previous highs. Okay, so again, not much clarity here. So I guess to sum up, when I look at these, I am not expecting necessarily bullishness. They need to consolidate and then break higher. So the Nasdaq, I think, is really going to, the Nasdaq and the Dow to me will give me the clearest clues. If the Nasdaq just immediately starts to break higher, then it's going to attempt obviously to continue out throughout that week, and the Dow follows through on that. Then that's two of them that are looking relatively bullish. That's a good sign. But I'm not. There's not enough of consolidation. Not enough of they haven't had enough of a rest in order for me to feel comfortable that they are now ready to resume a longer term trend. But we are in a bubble and stranger things can happen. But for me, there's just not enough confidence to be. I'll be cautious is I guess what I'm going to say with that. But I see this still as high risk. Okay, next up, having a look at the cryptos. So let's go across and have a look at the cryptos. Now, beautifully, they let off a lot of steam. So I love the fact that Bitcoin all the way down 20,000 tapped it on the nose, boom, and immediately recovered from that. Okay, there's a lot of buy orders sitting here. Immediately did that. The weekly itself is, I hate to say it, is not really that bullish. In other words, it's based on the weekly price action alone. It can still head lower. The monthly had a really solid. I mean, these are massive swings from 20,000 up to 38,000. Those are just huge, huge swings. Millionaires and billionaires kind of feeling the impact of that. But at this point, the month isn't over. We've got a good more than a week left, and therefore it is possible this could head a little bit lower. Could it go further than 20,000? It's possible, but I do think 20,000 is a really nice level for it to turn around at. So what I'm going to be looking for this week is to see the daily. The daily should give me clues if we do find price kind of heading back up in towards say 45,000. Then what I'm going to be looking for is to see if there's any kind of a swing high here. So if I get a swing high here, then there's a hint that perhaps this is going to head back down longer term. Failing that, if there's perhaps a higher low, which we get over the next couple of weeks, this could then be it. It could start to recover. The weekly is hinting at the fact that it's not yet done. Okay, the monthly has done a really nice correction, much needed, very quick response, which, if anything, just shows how ready this is to keep going. But it might still just not be enough. We'll see how that goes. Comparing this to say Ethereum. Okay, so Ethereum, look at that, incredibly bearish. Yes, we could close up a little bit higher, and that weekly looking great, beautiful. I mean, I'm very happy for this to come down to 2,000. This all looks good. Again, if it falls back down through 2,000, then the story is effectively, the narrative is that they are just not ready yet to get back up there. And then it just moving through the rest relatively quickly. Cardano just being knocked all the way back down. That weekly looks okay. So I think this week what I'd like to see here is a bullish candle. I'd like to see the same thing across the board, but see that finish up with a nice little bullish inside candle, which could hint at the next week it managing to recover. This is just a big knock. You have to kind of ask yourself, how strong are these really when they take a bit of a knock like that? Longer term, I'm obviously bullish, but right now I see these also as incredibly high risk, and this could actually just be the beginning of a more volatile period. Looking at this, just looking at Ripple kind of getting knocked around. It's got a lower high here. It's trying to find support at this 88 level, and that's a really nice bearish inside bar. So this sort of hints at the fact that this might want to head down a little bit lower. So there are signs in both that we're not necessarily out of the woods yet, even though the good news is they have let off a lot of that buying pressure, and Bitcoin being really good. Look at this outside bearish candle at the moment, and so we'll see this again also might find its way heading a little bit lower. So I have to keep in mind that although we have let off as much buying pressure as I feel we needed to, I have to keep in mind the possibility this might go back down a little bit lower this week. And so my expectation is really to keep an eye on this over the next, say, 4 to 8 weeks to see if we find a base. I'm looking for the buyers to come back in and then kind of do that. If we recover really quickly from that, then that would be amazing to me. But that also is a problem. The contradiction there is that if the bubbles burst and then immediately recovered, then why did the bubble burst in the first place? Because that was 2 weeks ago or a week ago. It's too easy. And so no, I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories or anything like that. It's simply just supply and demand. All right. So now moving on to, I'm going to recap quickly on the results of some of last week's charts, and then these are the charts of interest. So euro yen, kind of topped out there at that level. Pretty cool. Like the look of that. It now looks as though it's going to get ready for a bit of a correction on the weekly. So I quite like that. I think pound yen was also relatively nice and profitable. This actually overall is still sitting close to another level. So I think there's even the possibility, possibly, that this could push a little bit higher. Swiss yen. Swiss yen still looking nice and bullish here overall, and again also I think there's that possibility it might want to kick off and push a little bit higher. Then moving on to Aussie CAD. So Aussie CAD, I feel it's done a big move down. It is sitting on a big level here, and therefore it might kind of run a bit out of steam. But overall, the structure here, this was nice and profitable this week for intraday trading to the downside. I'm not yet convinced that this might not want to go a little bit further. So I'm going to be prepared for that. I want to see how it behaves around this level. If it breaks down and comes back up on the 4-hour time frame or the 2 or 1 hour time frame and finds resistance there, it might then head a little bit lower. So then moving on to say Aussie Swissy. So for me, Aussie Swissy's broken through this level of support. That monthly is now coming back down towards that 685 level, and therefore I think there might be some intraday opportunities to the downside here between that 0.7 level and the 0.6850 level. Okay, so that I quite like the look of Aussie yen. Also, I'm going to be looking for this to be heading a bit lower. So where that comes from is this monthly is showing some big exhaustion here. That weekly is now back into the moving averages, and yes, it could turn around. But the fact is that a high here, a high here, and a high here, it's really not that bullish, and therefore there is a possibility this could break lower. So basically, the Aussie crosses, and similarly the Kiwi crosses, Kiwi CAD, Kiwi yen, same ones, Kiwi Swissy, could offer short opportunities this coming week and head a little bit lower. On that list as well is Euro Swissy. This one a little bit more cautious, but look at this nice little bearish rejection candle, some room down to the next key level. It's doing a retracement on the higher time frame back down into these levels here, so there's a little bit of potential profit there, and this also certainly looks like it wants to break through here and head down to here. So there might be some nice intraday opportunities on Euro Swissy, which is not always the case, certainly not in the last few years. Then having a look at Euro Aussie and Pound Aussie together. So I'm actually more bullish on these than anything else. Okay, so really I want to see what happens when they come back down. So what happens when Euro Aussie comes back down to this level of support at 15,623? Does it produce a nice little bullish candle, and then is there a buying opportunity to the upside there? Could be a little bit choppy, a little bit messy. Conceptually though, it might be good. And then liking the look of Pound Aussie here, it really is trying to climb to the upside. It really is. It's really not a great quality trend, but it might sort itself out. If it starts to pick up momentum, then it'll smooth out and start to head a little bit higher. Okay, now on to the metals that I spoke about. So I hinted at there being some interesting stuff going on with the metals. I'm going to look at copper, platinum, and palladium. Copper is currently doing a retracement down to 4.25. Okay, it's had a massive run, and this could ultimately close as a bearish rejection candle, which would hint at a deeper correction, and so that could be the case. That's a possibility. Otherwise, I'm going to be looking for a nice little bullish candle to form at this local level of support. So I'll be keeping an eye out for that. But then when I go across to platinum, so platinum here is definitely looking quite bearish, certainly looking bearish on the weekly, and definitely looking bearish on the monthly, wanting to head a little bit lower. So very, very cautious on those. They're not looking bullish. They are looking more bearish than anything else. Palladium, also quite interesting to me. This weekly, I'll be keeping an eye on it. There's a nice little dense level here that it could be wanting to come back to test. So there is a possibility it could produce a nice little bullish candle this coming week, or it could find its way heading down a little bit further. So copper being overextended, platinum and palladium, all of them just hinting at the possibility, certainly, that if they don't just do a minor retracement, they might be looking to do a bigger drop and see that coming. So there could be some intraday tradable opportunities there, but again, they are also going largely against the longer term uptrend, but also they're not looking bullish, they're looking nice and weak. Very quickly looking at Tesla and Apple in terms of what they kind of did this last week. Apple producing a nice little bullish indecision candle at a level of support, and therefore this might be trying to form a base. That monthly though looks way more bearish. It's now approached the top of this blue area, where anywhere in this area is actually where I feel it could start that longer term letting off some of that steam, and therefore looking to head higher. Of course, if the indices overall head a little bit lower, this one will as well. There's a nice little bearish candle here, so break of this could indicate a move down to the next level, but it would have to break this level of support at 550. So keep an eye on that. Sorry, that was Tesla, I beg your pardon, not Apple. Tesla and Apple. Now look at Apple. I think Apple has a good chance at heading down towards 120. We'll see how that goes, because if it breaks these previous lows, then there's a much bigger move on the horizon. But if it can manage to stay above that and start to head a little bit higher, there could be a longer term breakout to the upside. Okay, Wells Fargo, let's have a look. Wells Fargo was pretty cool, did a nice little move up and then a bit of a correction. It's now looking more and more likely like that is done now. Wells Fargo is going to want to take a move down back towards 43, and that might end up as a bearish indecision candle hinting at a move down towards 40. So I think Wells Fargo has had a good week, at least in terms of the last kind of move there. Now it's looking way more like that is going to hit down. Okay, so therefore it now moves off my list of opportunities. I'm going to walk away from that. And finishing off with two commodities that I find quite interesting. So we've got coffee here, and coffee is really kind of trying to break to the upside. It's got this beautiful attempt to shift, to change its downtrend. It's had a move down, it's consolidated, it's now trying to break above that. So if it can break successfully above 155, there could then be buying opportunities to the upside. So coffee looking quite nice. I'm very happy to see that. And then soybean looking very much like it wants to have a correction, just a normal healthy retracement down towards say 1443 or 1400 on that weekly. However, that monthly is hinting at a much bigger correction, which is down towards 1300, or actually let's say towards 1270. So that's going to be interesting to me. Soybean looks like that could potentially now be looking for a much bigger correction to the downside, and therefore I'm bearish on it. But I do want to see how it reacts over the coming week into this area. If it immediately breaks these lows, then I shift to then the picture then becomes the bigger picture correction on that monthly time frame. So there we go, ladies and gents. Don't forget, there's stuff in the description as well. There's more information in the description, so don't be shy to comment or give me some, any kind of communication you want to do. But also there is stuff that I've put into the description for you that you can click through and work your way through that. And any other feedback that you've got for me would be great. I'd love to hear it. But that's it. So thank you very much, and obviously trade sensibly. And yeah, I think there are going to be some opportunities this week, but I also think there's going to be some interesting corrections and probably overdue before we then have hopefully a nice bullish recovery down the line. Thank you very much.